Explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill, we used to have a few years ago where it had 100% disabled on the license plate, and we've had lots of requests from veterans that are 100% disabled. They want that actual logo, the wording of 100% disabled on the tag. And that is the extent of the bill.
All right. Are there any questions on the bill? Seeing none for motion. Motion is title sufficient to pass. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed? Ayes have it. Next, Senate Bill 2083. This will be our omnibus tag bill, the beginnings of it. So if you do have a request for a tag, please be sure to get to Ian. We'll probably set a date sometime in March, but just make sure you have any requests that you do get them to Ian. Are there any questions on the bill? Seeing none for a motion. Motion is title sufficient to pass. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Next is Senate Bill 2142. Senator Berry, you're recognized to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It just simply extends the sales tax exemption for the construction, finishing and equipping of buildings at Camp Kamasa. That is the camp down in Copiah County for the handicapped children. It's a really remarkable place, but that's what it does.
All right. You've heard an explanation of the bill. Are there any questions? Seeing none for a motion. Motion is title sufficient to pass. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Next, Senate Bill 2266. Senator Berry, you're recognized to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill would compel the Department of Revenue to publish a list of items eligible for sales tax reduction or exemptions for those that hold a commercial farmer's permit, which they issue to farmers. There's some discrepancies across the state with different retailers of what is and what is not eligible, and there are no lists that exist. So this just asks them to publish a list so we know what's on there. It doesn't add or subtract anything that's already there, but just creates a list.
Okay. Are there any questions on the bill? Seeing none for a motion. Motion is title sufficient to pass. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Next, Senate Bill 2553. Senator Wiggins, you are recognized to explain the bill wherever you feel comfortable.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It is a simple bill. What the bill does, it's related to school bonds, and it literally, all it does is changes the voting threshold from 60% to majority. And so in the bill where you see the underlying language, that's what that is doing. This bill has been requested by what I call a coalition of districts, both rural and less rural areas. It doesn't change any of the voting requirements. Other than that, you still have to have a referendum. You have to do everything. It just simply changes it from 60% to 51%, or a majority rather.
All right. You heard an explanation of the bill. Are there any questions? Senator Polk for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator, what is the threshold for a bond bill in the Senate? What do you have to have to pass it?
I think you mean 3/5.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
But I would say on that, but the voters are still voting on this. It's changing it to majority.
Senator Whaley for a question.
So when we're taking this from the 60% threshold to the basic majority, we're just simply saying that we're allowing this to be to give our school districts a chance to make it easier to raise taxes. Is that basically what we're saying?
Not well. They get to put it before a vote, and if the citizens vote on that, then yes, they make that choice. I'll give you an example right now. Ocean Springs in my district, they're making a decision whether they want to do that or not. We're not doing it one way or the other. I will say that why it's come to us through this, what I call coalition, is that school districts. It allows them to make the decision within their local communities to meet their needs on that. And some of your less rural districts who are seeing population, they want to do that so they can meet the needs. And in your more rural districts, they get to make the decision is what is local for them. And if they don't want to raise the taxes, they don't have to. So it's still within the people's decision.
And I can appreciate that. And, you know, you mentioned the rural areas and the less rural areas. I come from a very rural area, and one of the biggest sources of revenue, of course, is landowners. They're paying a majority of these taxes. So when you have people that are not paying the same share as some, it becomes an issue. And this has been an issue in my counties here recently. And I don't understand, as we're talking about cutting taxes all other times, while we're making it easier here. I appreciate you.
Senator, I would respond to that, it is supporting our education. If we support education, this allows them to do it. Again, we're not changing anything. I would also submit that you could look at it as, quote, big government telling the locals what they can and can't do. We don't like it when the federal government tells us what we can't do. And so we're telling them that they can't do it. And we, on the education committee, we spend a lot of time talking about local control, local control, local control. And so this is simply saying you have the right to make that decision without the legislature putting that mandate on it. Again, it's the people's vote.
And I appreciate that, and I'm all for local control, but with that local control, I am also not in favor of putting added burden on landowners who are already struggling. So thank you.
All right, Senator Bryan, you have a question?
Well, isn't it true that all this bill does is allow a majority of the voters to impose a tax in the district in which they vote?
That's correct.
And the voters are now being prohibited from operating the sort of public school that they want to, because a minority of voters won't let them raise money, for example, for a new school bill.
That's correct. And whether people support it or not, for various reasons, it is easier to stop a vote from happening. We all are familiar with social media, and the default position is we're not going to do it. And people listen to social media, and you're having a minority of people make the decision for the community as a whole. Yes.
And the millage that would be increased for the public schools would also be imposed on car tax, would it not?
That I don't serve on finance.
It's an ad valorem tax.
Oh, okay.
So car tags and personal property is assessed just like real property.
I'll defer to you if that's the answer. Yes.
Thank you.
Senator Kirby for a question.
Thank you. Senator Bryan and I were on the same level here as far as questions. But my question is, are the schools, or as far as that goes, cities, counties, anyone else, are they required to inform the voters that their property taxes and car tax will go up, and how much?
Yes, it doesn't change. They're required to do that now under the whole system. And so they would still be required to do that. And plus it's a referendum, as is done in any place. And so people would have that knowledge, but yes.
I wanted to make sure it was still there.
We are not, nothing of that is changing.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions on the bill? Seeing none for a motion? Motion is title sufficient to pass. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, no. Chair's in doubt. All right, if you're for the bill, raise your hand. Are you raising your hand, Senator? You raise your hand, raise it up. I'm not ready to see it, sorry. All right, 6. Boyd, 7, okay, 7. All right, if you're against it, raise your hand. 2, 3. All right, the noes have it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. Next is Senate Bill 2729. Senator Bryan, you're recognized to explain.
Mr. President, or Mr. Chairman, I don't know if the committee sub from Public Health is before the members or not, but the committee sub is a 1-paragraph bill which establishes the fund. There's no revenue feature to it. It does not divert any money from anywhere, and the bill has a reverse repealer.
Yes.
The driving force behind this proposal is that there are private entities around the nation who might support a trust fund in Mississippi if the trust fund for public health, if the purpose of the trust fund were properly drawn. There's no public money in this. It simply says, what the bill does is it establishes a fund into which people may make contributions. Obviously, if it's going to become law, it requires much more detail than that. But that's what the bill does. I'll be happy to answer questions.
And as you said, it does have a reverse repealer in it. It may not be on your sheet. They didn't have time to print it because Public Health met right before us, but are there any questions on the bill? All right, seeing none for a motion.
I move title sufficient to pass committee sub.
Motion is title sufficient to pass committee sub. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Next is Senate Bill 2802. This bill essentially creates an increase in the amount of money that's sent to the Municipal Fire Protection Fund and the County Fire Protection Fund. Raises it from, I think, up to $7.5 million, about a $2.5 million increase in both of them. I would have an amendment to add a reverse repealer to this. It's an increase in the diversion, and I think there's a lot to balance at the end of the session. So my amendment is that we add a reverse repealer. Are there any questions on the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed? Amendment's adopted. Any further questions on the bill? Senator Bryan for a question.
At the risk of hurting the bill, I would like to speak in favor of it.
You may proceed.
You know, I think it was about to pass if I just shut up, but I wanted to say, Mr. Chairman, that one of the big problems facing this state is what to do about rural areas, which are becoming more rural every day, generally speaking. And we have small municipalities, many of them with declining populations, but still substantial populations. The people who live there need water, they need sewer, they need fire protection. And the cost of all of this is going up. We've got 100-year-old water and sewer pipes all over the state. And those are increasing problems for people in small towns and rural areas. In particular, if you're a small municipality and you're trying to maintain your fire department, you got to get you some fire trucks. And the cost of fire trucks has just gone through the roof. And you picture any one of a number of municipalities with populations under 10,000, particularly under 5,000, they're struggling to come up with money for fire trucks, yet fire protection is one of the most critical things. The only solution is propositions like this for the state to increase the money that's going in to our firefighting fund and the fund to provide fire trucks. I'm in favor of the bill, but Mr. Chairman, I think this is a matter which is going to continue to require attention from this body for years to come.
Thank you, Senator. Any other questions? Seeing none for a motion? Motion is title sufficient do pass. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed? Oh, reverse, yeah. Title sufficient do pass committee sub, excuse me. All those in favor say aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Next is Senate Bill 2822. Senator Parks, you are ready to go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Offering a committee sub at the appropriate time.
Okay, yeah, there is a committee sub that is in front of you that's proposed. Go ahead. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. What this bill is an opportunity for us as a body, as we have heavily supported economic development and second chance opportunities to the public. This bill offers both of those. And how this bill will be affected in doing that is it does not automatically disqualify a person from being approved for a permit, where in the past, a person with a felony crime, it has automatically been it's not been available. So this would allow at least an individual to complete the permit process and be considered for a licensing permit for the distribution of alcohol or the sale. Happy to answer any questions.
All right, you heard the explanation. Bill. Senator Blunt for a question.
Does this bill require that for a person with a felony conviction who would like to go back and work in this industry, the legislature to pass a specific bill with that person's name on it, or for that person to be pardoned by the governor, or is it just, would this just be automatic as a result of this change in statute?
There is nothing automatic about this bill. This is simply the opportunity to complete the permit process and be considered.
So they have to be,
Automatically disqualified.
because if they've committed some heinous felony, they probably would be rejected, but there are felonies that they could possibly be approved for.
If you read the bill, there is only 4 nonviolent crime
Okay.
and 1 that is not associated with drugs.
Great. Thank you, Senator Parks.
Any further questions on the bill? All right, is there a motion on the committee sub? All right, motion is title sufficient to pass committee sub. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed? The ayes have it.
Thank you.
Next is Senate Bill 2846. Senator Sparks is not with us. So we will hold that one and come back to it. Next is Senate Bill 2849. And what that bill does is it preserves the right of a secret ballot if there is a vote for a labor group to come in, if there's a project that's done with the state on an economic development project that the state provides financing or provides incentives for. It just says that any, in section 2, it just talks about any efforts to attempt to create a labor group has to preserve the right of a secret ballot. And that's an explanation of the bill. Are there any questions on the bill? Seeing none from Senator Bryan, you have a question?
Doesn't the National Labor Relations Board control how all of this works?
There's a part of it, yes. We're saying in the state, if state funds are used in the process, that it just preserves the right for a secret ballot.
Well, if the National Labor Relations Board says that you can establish a union with cards or whatever the system is, then I'm assuming there's nothing we can do about that. And if that's the rule nationwide, wouldn't the effect of this mean to be say that we just couldn't offer any of these incentives because it would violate federal law for the entity to do what we're requiring them to do?
I don't have any information to the alternative of what we're trying to do here. If we can look into it before we bring it up on the floor and find out, but it's my understanding that it just, all we're doing is preserving the right for a secret ballot. I'm not aware of them mandating it be a public vote, but all we're saying is that if you're going to do it in Mississippi, the employee has the right to a private ballot.
Well, my one suggestion, and I'm just thinking off the top of my head, might be an amendment that would say unless it violates federal law, but I think the chair's suggestion that we have a floor amendment if it's deemed advisable is
can-
probably the best thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Are there any other questions? Seeing none, there a motion? Motion is title sufficient do pass. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. All right, we'll go back to Senate Bill 2846. Senator Sparks, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 2846 allows a municipality or a county to enter into an agreement together for an economic development project in a situation where they potentially will pledge future tax revenues to a type of TIF project or things of that magnitude. They've not been able to work together. They've had to operate independently of one another, and from time to time, this will allow them to work in conjunction to draw these projects, as well as a qualified project is defined under MFLEX. Of course, we've tried to continually upgrade and update our code to include the MFLEX piece that we passed a couple of years ago as far as the definition of projects. But the intent is to allow these organizations, these units of government rather, to work together to draw an economic development project to their region. That's a brief explanation. Mr. Chairman, I would yield any questions.
You heard an explanation of the bill. Are there any questions? Senator Blunt for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Sparks, is it solely to allow local governments to work together? I guess we had to pass something, I'm thinking particularly of the Pull Alliance in your part of the state on Toyota. But doesn't the bill also allow an individual county or municipality of any size to enter into these agreements independently by themselves?
I think independently that has already been available in some arenas, maybe some not. But the point is to allow a unit of government, whether it be individually a city or a county, or in conjunction with one another, to work together on economic development projects, maybe not as big as the Pull Alliance, but to work together on specific projects for development purposes.
Is there any size requirement for the size of the project?
Give me just a moment. I apologize. I don't.
I'm just concerned while you're looking. I'm concerned about the resources available to a small town or a small county when they're sitting down across the table from somebody to negotiate a 20-year TIF agreement, if what they can do under current law and whether they have the resources at their disposal to adequately represent their constituents when they're sitting down with a big.
I think there's a cap of 10 million as it relates on line 131. But I do not see a floor in it, to my understanding, as far as a bottom end of it. Again, I want to let local units of government have the flexibility to pursue projects that may be unique to their area. And most all these boards, I would assume, have counsel. And if they're going to enter into something like that, they would, lean on their counsel as well.
Well, I'm sure they all have counsel. I mean, I know that the town of Terry has an attorney on retainer to deal with issues that come before the town of Terry, but I don't know that, and they're right there on a big interstate. Does that council have the wherewithal to deal with some of these folks, one of these complex multi-year financing agreements? I'm a little concerned about that, but I appreciate you responding to my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Any other questions? Senator Chasnow.
Thank you. Senator Sparks, is this bill intended to help the smaller counties, the ones that are more rural and have less population than, say, some of the larger municipalities and cities that we have in the state?
It is, Senator, and I would, look at some of the counties that I represent that have extremely small municipalities that may be on somewhat of a thoroughfare, a major thoroughfare, but within their own abilities could not fund a project or step out in that matter, and they might could work with another municipality or unit of government. So yes, would be the short answer.
As a follow-up, how do you propose to get the counties and municipalities to work together?
Well, now you've brought up cats and dogs living in harmony. I'm not always sure how that will take place, but at least they have the opportunity.
If you can find a way, will you please let me know?
Yes, I will, Senator. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Senator. Or motion?
Title sufficient, do pass.
Motion is title sufficient, do pass. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Next bill on the agenda is 2850. 2850 is a vape registry bill similar to what we passed last year. This bill proposes to create and maintain a list of certified electronic smoking devices that can be sold in Mississippi. According to the FDA, this bill does not determine which products are legal or illegal, but according to the FDA, they are supposed to be regulated by the FDA, and they have a process for that. Obviously, we've all had stories of illegal products being sold in Mississippi and other areas. This is an effort to help facilitate a list of legal products that are allowed to be sold in the country and in Mississippi. The bill basically sets a registry up, and it starts, I believe, September 1st from 2025. And every year after there's a list, they'll be maintained. Each product has to be registered, and that is the explanation of the bill. It's pretty simple. It's just a bill to create a registry. It also creates a cigarette registry. We were not party to the master settlement, but that was one of the requirements in the master settlement was these lists be created. It also accomplishes that. Louisiana has a very similar bill. They have over 300 products on it with about 17 different manufacturers. So I don't think this is going to hinder the market, but it is about what is acceptable and what is legal to be manufactured or sold in the United States. Now we're trying to get a list to protect consumers. So that is the explanation of the bill. I'll be happy to yield for any questions. Seeing none, for a motion. Motion is title sufficient, do pass. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Next is Senate Bill 2852. That is a repealer that is extended on tax credits for certain water transportation enterprises. It just extends the repealer out 4 years. Are there any questions? Seeing none, for a motion. Motion is title sufficient, do pass. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Next bill, 2853. This is another repealer extended on tax credits for certain charges using port and airport facilities. Just extends the repealer out 4 years. Are there any questions on the bill? 2029 is the date it repeals. Seeing no questions, motion is title sufficient, do pass. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Next is Senate Bill 2854. Okay. Senator Johnson, you're recognized to explain.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill revises the definitions for tourism project and resort development. It increases the amount of private investment required for a hotel, full-service hotel or resort, and then it decreases the percentage that may be used on a resort of the percentage of private investment for a resort that can be applied to retail activities. And that's an explanation of the bill.
I think we're going to add a reverse repealer to this. There's some more language that we're working on to try to working with MDA and trying to make sure we accomplish the mission, and also there's some developments that are out there that we want to make sure we don't hinder in the process. So,
Motion would be to add a reverse repealer.
are there any questions? Move adoption of the amendment. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it.
Title sufficient, do pass committee sub.
All right, motion is title sufficient, do pass committee sub. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Next on the agenda is the Senate Bill 2855. Senator Johnson, you're recognized to explain.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill takes the Mississippi Community Heritage Preservation Grant Fund, moves it from DFA to Archives and History, and that's an explanation of what the bill does.
You heard explanation of the bill. Are there any questions? Seeing none for a motion.
Title sufficient, do pass.
All right, motion is title sufficient, do pass. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Next two bills are bills requested by our friends at MDA, and I think PJ or somebody, hey, you come on up. Thank y'all for being here.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman.
Good morning. Senate Bill 2856, the Local Government Capital Improvement Revolving Loan Fund. Y'all speak to that.
Yeah, our cap loan fund is one of the most consistently used programs in our portfolio to assist with infrastructure investment associated with economic development projects, and we encourage its extension.
Okay. So y'all are wanting to add some language in here that basically y'all kind of determine what is acceptable charge. Explain what that.
Well, it's just with the price of things going up, we need to make sure we can address the current cost of things. I think the amount is a little low. You have something like that?
What are some of the examples of what some of these charter expenses are that y'all use this fund for?
Sure. I'm going to turn it over to our expert in this area. She's going to give you all the update.
All right.
My understanding is this language just gives us greater authority in defining what is an eligible project for this program. We are using this program more and more to incentivize economic development projects where there is a local public infrastructure need. It's a tool that local authorities can use to help contribute to the infrastructure needs of the project.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Are there any questions? Senator, for a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the change I'm seeing is on lines 48 and 49, and it says any project determined to be a capital improvement by the department. Is there any sort of criteria that has to be met? Because this just seems like carte blanche to make any determination that you want.
Right now, this program is used both to support economic development projects, but that involve a new company locating or expanding, creating jobs, making investment. But the program is also used for community development projects. A community can use this program to purchase a fire truck, for instance. And frequently when we are dealing with community development projects, that's what you'll see. So I think right now, it's used for both community development and economic development. I think it's just refining those definitions so that when MDA is considering this program as far as it's used for economic development projects, a little greater discretion in what falls into that category. Again, it doesn't change the fact that communities can still use this on the community development side.
Okay, you said refining definitions, but this just opens it to anything. Like refining would be like narrowing it in my mind, but this makes it any project, so it widens it instead of refining it, at least as it reads to me.
I certainly understand that. I unfortunately don't have the copy in front of me as far as the previous language.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, trying to address this question. Thank you, Senator. One example that I think would be relevant is 2 years ago, this body added a new provision to this section that said that municipal gas projects, for instance, could be added. So that's kind of been a pattern over several years to add new authorities to MDA. We simply suggested that if this is going to be a trend, that MDA could just have a little bit more authority to determine what a capital improvements project is. Therefore, we wouldn't have to go back and make changes to this law every other year.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none for a motion? Motion is title sufficient do pass. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Last bill, the Senate Bill 2857, Small Municipalities and Limited Population County Fund. This is increase the grant money that may be awarded by MDA. Can y'all kind of explain?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So this is a grant fund that has been immensely popular in years past. This is sort of known for as the title would imply, for the smallest municipalities and limited population counties to do infrastructure projects. In the last couple of years, this program has not been utilized as much. The legislature has not funded it as much. We have simply recommended that if the legislature does go back to funding these types of projects, that 250,000 does not buy what it used to, and we would recommend that the limits be raised, or the minimum and maximum be raised to $1 million. There's no new money necessarily being added. Obviously, that's a decision for you all, but we would simply recommend that if the legislature does start funding this program again, that the minimum should be raised on that.
All right. Any questions? Seeing none for a motion. Motion is title sufficient do pass. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. The ayes have it. And I want to thank everybody for hanging in there on a long meeting. We're probably going to wind up calling another meeting this afternoon. There's one or two bills I think that are we'll have to wait to go through a prior committee. So we'll probably reconvene this afternoon. And I also want to thank my daughter Carlisle and her friend Campbell, who came today for a political science project. They had to come listen to a important political meeting, and I hope it lived up to the billing. So if there are no other business for motion to rise and report, all those in favor say aye. All opposed? Ayes have it.